Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Framework Podcast. I'm Jamie Hopkins and I'm joined by the other host here, Anna, as usual. Anna, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Jamie.
We're up here in Las Vegas for Excel 2022 for this recording, and we're up in the top of the Chelsea Theater, and I was doing weird voices right before we started. So if I go into those later on, if you're watching it on the thing, there's cool shadows, and there's a mannequin right behind Jim over here. So I'm looking at that like the whole time. It's really cool, and there's like a rope around it, like all twisted. It's
headless though.
It is a headless mannequin. That is true. I have no transition from the headless mannequin to my friend here, Mr. Jim Cooper. But Jim, excited to have you on.
Jamie, Anna, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Jim, give us 30 seconds, kind of who you are, what you do, and then we'll ask you some other more fun questions still.
Sure. Jim Cooper, co-CEO, partner at FIG. So Financial Independence Group's independent marketing organization out of Charlotte, North Carolina. We work with thousands of independent financial advisors all across the country. Our calling is to empower them with whatever it is that they need to help as many families as possible with their retirement planning. So been in business at Financial Independence Group since 1976. So I started it when I was in diapers. No, I'm just kidding. So our founders, Bill and Erica Kane, started the company in 1976. I joined on with the firm in 2002, right when I got out of school. I had a business management minor and finance degree and felt like I was going to get into the family business. Decided about a year after doing that my family business wasn't for me, and kind of stumbled into the business. And I started at FIG. I was the 9th or 10th employee. I think our goal that year was to do about $100 million in overall production. Fast forward the tape today, 20 years later. So I've been with the firm over 20 years now. We'll do $3.5 billion of new asset flow year in and year out, and there's about 165 employees. So been a wild ride. Done everything at the firm that you can think of, from play janitor to become the top sales guy to chief distribution officer to chief marketing officer and ultimately CEO.
Yeah.
So Jim, that's a really impressive tenure you have, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but we always like to get some insight into our guests' favorite foods or current food obsessions.
Favorite food? I guess I'd have to say if I was going to go junk food, it would be pizza. But I eat a lot of chicken and a lot of salmon.
Both good, healthy choices.
Yes.
So Jim is actually a really boring eater, and sometimes it's
right?
painful. Yeah, like you go
okay.
places, and he will. He came to Omaha one time. We all went out to the steak dinner place, and they had like chocolate cake desserts and everything coming out.
I
and
remember
he goes,
that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. You have a bowl
But
of
go ahead.
berries.
I'm sorry, Jamie. I got
have a
excited
bowl
because
of
I remembered the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So basically, we're all at dinner, and this beautiful fruit bowl comes out, and somebody asks, "How did you get that?" And Jim says, "I asked for it." Just like, hello. It's very simple.
You don't get if you don't ask.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah. Well, I love FIG as a company, and Carson and FIG have worked closely together now for a little bit of time, and it's been excellent. I know a lot of our advisors that are listening to the show have had that experience. The other one we like to ask Jim too is like, what was your first money memory?
First money memory. I would say probably starting like a little business as a kid, cutting lawns and saving that up for whatever it is that I was trying to buy at that point in time as a kid. I'd say that was probably it. Like, socking away a couple bucks here and there in my little piggy bank so I could bug my mom and dad to take me to the store to buy whatever it is that I don't remember what I was trying to buy at that point in time, but that's probably the first thing that comes to me just off the cuff that I can think of as a money memory.
So I know you said you don't remember what you bought with that money, but do you remember the first significant purchase that you were just really proud of and excited to make?
I mean, I would say probably my first car is the first thing that comes to memory, but I'm sure there was something before that. Maybe like a Topps rookie baseball card of one of my favorite players back in the day would probably be another one. Trading baseball cards was a thing back then, not so much anymore. My son trades Pokemon cards now, which I'm trying to figure out what that is. But
Jamie probably knows.
I do know all about Pokemon. So today's been wonderful. I've heard Pokemon Go was referenced on main stage. Jim brought up Pokemon, and actually Daniel Pinkin, we weave Pokemon cards into that conversation too. So this is the third Pokemon reference of the day.
He's obsessed.
it's your day, man.
Oh, this is good, right? And actually, so Broderick, who's sitting over here, is also a huge fan of the song that leads into Pokemon. It is an amazing song, and we were going to go do it in karaoke one time, but we did not go that night, and it is hard to find that one somewhere. But it is a great song.
I don't know this song, Jim. Do you?
I don't either.
Oh.
We'll have to check it out.
Broderick,
These
you want to
nerds are
sing
talking
it?
Yeah, could you sing it for us?
Pokemon! Gotta catch 'em all. That's it. That's as far as I go on that one. Well, I will shift from. So actually, I did an article about digital estate planning and used Pokemon Go as like the catch part of it, like the fun aspect. And in Pokemon Go, you do catch things, so it all works well. So the whole world, as you mentioned, of estate and retirement planning, all of that. You guys have really dove into that, and this is a little bit different than we usually ask. But what's on your mind as a leader of a company when we look out at the retirement landscape today? Like, what's something that you guys are working on or you're really interested about just in general when you look out at the market?
Yeah, I think from a client-centric standpoint, just continuing to dial in the product offering that we have, whether it be at FIG. I mean, our main lines of business is all things safe money investments, so fixed indexed annuities, life insurance, care planning, med sup, DI. And all of those products across the landscape have evolved tremendously, over the course of the last just few years. I mean, the annuity of today, for instance, is drastically different than the annuity of 10 years ago. I think one of the things that we are laser focused on, I sit on a lot of the boards at the major insurance carriers that we represent, and spending a lot of time with their leadership team as to how can we continue to challenge the status quo? How can we continue to really look at that product offering and say, what can we do to think outside the box and bring more innovative concepts and design to the marketplace? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? Is helping as many people as you possibly can. And I think the products have evolved in a very good way to date, but I still think that there's some work to do.
So not just specific to your products, but since you have such a long tenure in the profession, in the industry, what are some of the bigger changes that you've witnessed over the years, and where do you foresee the next 10 years? What do you foresee some of the bigger trends coming down the pike?
Yeah, I think for, like my industry specifically, is that what
Yes.
Yeah, I think what I would say there is it's such a niche business, right? Like when I first kind of tripped into Financial Independence Group and this whole IMO, FMO space, you don't learn about that in business school. Like nobody really knows what an IMO is, especially 20 years ago. Maybe they do a little bit more now. So today it's a little bit more mainstream. But I can tell you, in my 20 years in this industry, in that space, it is evolved a ton. It used to be 20 years ago that, having access to 80 different insurance companies and having the top contracts and all the products was good enough because the independent advisor could call you rather than 80 different insurance companies and sit on hold for however long they might have to do that. It simplified their life. But then a couple years after that, it became pretty apparent that, okay, product's important, but what good is a product if you've got nobody to talk to about it? Because our client is the independent financial advisor, and they're all one prospect away from unemployment. So what we had to reinvent ourselves into at that point in time is we had to figure out a way to brand them as the trusted advisor in their area. So we had to have product, right? We had to have back office support and be able to help them with case construction and illustration and school them up on what products fit where. But then beyond that, it evolved to where we had to actually help them market. Because once they had talked to all their friends and family and they ran out of people to talk to, they're like, what do I do now? I don't have the backing of, one of the big companies, New York Life, Mass Mutual, or whatever it may be, to actually live off of or work off of. So I've got to figure that out myself. So we built out a full service marketing arm to do that for them. So anything you can think of to get them in front and keep them in front of qualified prospects, we had to, quite frankly, reinvent ourselves and really have as an offering. Then beyond that, once we had the product and we taught them how to be better marketers, we had to teach them how to be better business owners and CEOs. Because what we quickly learned is we've got a lot of great salespeople, but all too often not the best business people. And so, we had to make a lot of major investments into resources to help them be better CEOs and business owners and run a true business, because most of them they were a one-man band. And then all of a sudden they woke up, they've got 5, 6, 20, 30, 40 employees, and they're like, this is a real business. What do I do? So, the industry evolved into that. So then it was, okay, you got product, then you've got marketing, then you've got practice management and business building that you had to be able to work with them on. Then beyond that, the next evolution was, wow, okay, we've got all of that in place. Well, what about staffing? Like as these firms are growing, where do they go to find good talent? So we brought that in-house and had to offer that. So what an IMO was 20 years ago is so different than what it is today, because we do all of that and then some as an independent marketing organization today. In a lot of ways, those independent advisors can plug into our network, and it's kind of like a captive opportunity where they can have all of what it is that they would get at one of those companies, but they maintain their independence.
Interesting. So tell me, both Jamie and Jim, talk to our listeners about the work that Carson and Fig does together.
Yeah, I don't know if you want me to start or you want to go.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Well, so I mostly call up Jim like every other Thursday and say I've got an idea, and then we talk through it, and then, we never tell anybody else.
There's some truth to that. There's some truth to that. Jamie and I are big thinkers, and we do spend a lot of time talking about strategy, much of which might have not been implemented quite yet, but the day will come.
Yeah. Well, we announced probably a year and a half ago from when the recording of this, right, out to the world, that we came together and really launched. We'll talk about one of the things on our side, then I'll let you do your side too. And, we launched a joint venture, in essence, for our Carson advisors to be able to leverage all of the things that Jim just talked about, right? And especially the insurance access to all these different products, all these different carriers in a simplified manner at Carson. So you don't have to go out and talk to 50 different carriers and product developers, and there's a home for it, and the technology is there. And then we build out a support team inside of Carson to also help with that. So we've got Matt Lewis, who heads up that team, who's been fantastic on building up that relationship. And we launched that at our partner summit, a year and a half ago. And that was like I think that was the first event we were all at, like right after COVID.
Yeah, it was.
Right?
Yeah.
And, the energy there was amazing. So we've been kind of building upon that. That was the core piece we built. We've got some other, probably shouldn't announce some of those. We got some things that will come out later in the next year or so that we're adding to this relationship and really partnership. But then we did take some things over to your side too, and I guess we'll let you, if you want to talk about that on coaching and your Elevate platform.
Yeah. I think, Jamie said it well. I mean, clearly, Carson set out to have a world-class insurance offering, and since 1976, that's what we've worked on at FIG. So, we're helping to power Carson Insurance. But what's been fascinating and really just awesome to see throughout the entire process that, I don't know, Jamie, we started at maybe 2.5 years ago, like the first really talking about this, just getting to know Ron and the entire leadership team at Carson. It's just eerie how similar the cultures are, right? Because for any long-term business partnership to work, there has to be a fit. Like, that's the first big box that has to be checked. And without a shadow of a doubt, the cultures at Carson, that family feel, that community, that Ron and Aaron and Jamie and the whole team here has built, you can feel that when you walk into their office, when you come to any of their events. And FIG's always been the same way. It's a family, and everyone can feel that when they walk into our offices and our events as well. So that was a big deal, for us. But then alongside that, as we've gotten to, just for me, getting to understand more about what Carson offered as an RIA, everything that I just walked through a minute ago that the IMO industry has evolved into and what FIG has had to offer to bring value to our advisors, Carson does the same thing. They have coaching. We had coaching. They have a marketing department. We have a marketing department. They have business resources. We have business resources. Like all of the stuff was so similar. So everything just meshed, right? So it started in a way that, okay, Carson needed an insurance partner. But what we really have found is so much more than that. Because now what we've also brought into the FIG fold is our flagship coaching program at FIG. Carson Coaching is available to all of FIG's distribution. Because let's face it, the insurance industry and the asset management industry are colliding in a fast and furious way. You're seeing it in the product offerings. You're seeing it, out there in the IMO space. Every major IMO owns an RIA. But the reality is those IMOs were IMOs first, RIAs second. And what I've come to realize in our partnership with Carson that's so awesome is we bring a lot of the best of Carson to our audience, which is a different audience at FIG. Everyone there has come up in the insurance space first, asset management second, more often than not. There's a lot of value that has been provided to our advisors that wasn't there before by way of coaching. And then vice versa, we're out here at Carson events helping bring some of the insurance message into the asset management space, which has been nothing short of, a lot of fun and pretty cool to do. But I think what we've also found is that the strength in the partnership, the message that we can bring to the overall financial planning community is that now through this partnership, you have the opportunity to align with a world-class RIA in Carson and a world-class IMO in Financial Independence Group, which is in a lot of ways the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons when I asked you will you come on the show, because I was like, we've put press releases out, you and I talk about it, we go to places, but getting this message out to me still feels really important, right? That because we run into people all the time that go, oh, I didn't even know you guys did that, right? I mean, press releases don't get to everybody. Yep. And there really, and I remember when we did it, we said there really isn't anything else just like this in the industry, right? There isn't. That one grew up in the insurance business and one grew up in the advisory business. And it even goes on our other side too. We talk about it a lot. Like it's the difference between us and a lot of the BD world is that a lot of the BDs out there might offer an RIA too, but they all came second, right? They were BDs first and then they started. And Ron was like basically the original person who was doing advisory ads, right? Like I think that they celebrated 25 million assets under management LPL through a party when Ron hit that, right? And he's like the first one there. And
he's the OG.
Yeah. And he, and I love it now because everyone, like on stage today, like 6 people made fun of Ron for being old. And it's like, it's this whole thing,
Disrespect.
What?
The disrespect.
Disrespect. Yeah. Well, you got to be careful because like you still want to stay employed. So like, the joke only goes like so far. Then you got to say some really nice things about Ron. And the other thing is Ron said, Ron's like, I'm living for another 100 years. So like that's variable then if Ron's old because he's going to live, I would be dead before Ron. So then like there's a whole thing there, right? So but like there is nothing like this. And the ability to put both of them together, we have to now, like when we talk about these worlds are colliding, that whole retirement income world and the asset world, like you have to be able to serve clients through both. And you need the fixed income products in there. You need annuity products. And every time you look at anybody, whether it's Kitsy's or FAO or Finca and all the academics out there, they're all like, hey, you need to put those into your plan. And you get a whole side of the world though, and you still run into them. Like, well, we don't really use insurance. Yep. And it's I've said this before too, but I mean, that's a complete failure. It's a failure on the fiduciary side and everything. And it's probably worth bringing this up because we've leveraged this now too. Some people don't like the commission side though. And you guys dealt with that too, right? And how have you looked at that for those that don't want to be licensed in insurance?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've actually built out an offering to cater to that because we do realize that there is an audience of, fee-only planners or what have you that, that's how they built their firm. That's how they built their practice, and they're not going to change that. However, they've been referring that business maybe down the street to a potential competitor one day. So, we built out an OID, an outsourced insurance desk, where we have licensed professionals that will write that commission-based business for the advisor. If that's something that, they don't want to bring in-house. What we found is, though, even once we do that, not all the time, but many times, advisors do end up saying, okay, I get it. I didn't realize that I could take a trail in the commission and make 1% a year, just like I've been billing off of my assets. So, can I work with you and maybe bring a licensed advisor into the office and still leverage those products, which, is another option. And then clearly there is a rise of true fee-based products that are out there on both the annuity and life insurance side of the business. So clearly we've got those contracts, and we can help school, which products can you bill out of, which can't you, who have the private letter ruling, who don't, and so on and so forth. To us, that's really what we feel called to do at the end of the day is, if there's a problem, we challenge ourselves to go out there and seek to provide a solution. So when there was a problem of people saying, well, I like insurance, but I don't want to take a commission, well, we built out a desk that will take the commission for them.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit here because I was thinking about this earlier when you were talking about college. So we're shifting from fee-based product and going back into college. And you mentioned going into the family business. And I was like, oh, I remember why you didn't go in the family business, Jim. You know why? Because you didn't get drafted by the Cowboys. And,
Yes, no. Certainly wasn't good enough for that.
Yeah.
So my dad played there for 10 years. But no, I got to JMU. So I played 4 years at James Madison, but that was enough. And the dream was over. Yeah. But the family business was Cooper. Our last name means barrel smith. So it used to be like wooden barrels. You put like beer and gunpowder and everything. So my great-great-grandfather founded Cooper and Sons in Philly. Jamie.
Yep, we talked about that.
Cooper and Sons is actually still there today. So the one in Philly would make the drums. And when my dad retired from the NFL, and by the way, he played, 77 to 87. He was a right tackle, so they didn't pay offensive linemen a fraction of what they pay them today. I mean, he had a job in the off season, and he did one commercial when he was a rookie. In camp, they were playing cards, and they told him to go upstairs. They kept telling him to go upstairs and get beer, so he got tired of doing it. So he carried a refrigerator down the stairs, and the president of Miller Lite was playing poker that night and said, "Can you do that again?" So instead of getting $1 million for his commercial, he got a lifetime supply of Miller Lite. So growing up, I thought that everyone's garage wallpaper were like cases of Miller Lite. I didn't know that was just my dad's commercial deal that he negotiated. I think, looking at that family business thing, unfortunately, it wasn't Cooper Tires, it was Cooper Drums. Mm-hmm. And he expanded the business from Philly to Charlotte, which is what brought us to Charlotte, North Carolina 30 years ago. So when I got out of school and the football dream was over, I had a business management and a minor in finance degree, and I thought I'd be a daddy's boy and go have the corner office and run sales. And he wasn't built that way. My dad's old school, and he was like, "You're going to earn your stripes." So he put me in air quotes, for those of you that can't see me, out in the yard, which is standing next to a furnace, which the wooden drums now have graduated into 55-gallon steel drums that you see on construction sites. And there's all types of crap in them, and stuff's falling in your hair and everything like that. No one speaks my language because it's manual labor. And I was like, I just don't want to do this for the rest of my life. So family has always been super important to me. I've always been very close with my mother and father. I've always been super close with my brother and sister. And it was the first time in my life when I actually started resenting my dad. I was like, I get it maybe for like a month or two. I was like, come on, dude, but I've been doing this for a year. And hindsight, it was the best thing that ever happened. He's never fully admitted it. But he did tell me one day, he was like, I was kind of doing that on purpose because I knew that you had other God-given talents and didn't need to stay in this business that was kind of a dying business anyway.
I'm glad Jamie brought it back to college because I had wanted to ask about, so you've been at FIG for 20 years,
Yeah.
right out of college after this stint with your family business. And that's kind of not really a normal common thing anymore. So talk to us about why do you think you've had such longevity, and what have been some of the secrets to your success for maybe our more executive-minded listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the reason, being there, it kind of goes back to the story of how I got there that I left out a little bit. So like I said, I started in 2002 and have done everything there that, you can think of. But the guy who really brought me into the business, I mentioned Bill and Erica, who founded the company in 1976, but they had a son by the name of Bo Johnson. And Bo was the guy that really recruited me and brought me into the business. And, he was the third owner of FIG at the time and the chief marketing officer. So it was Bill, Erica, and their son, Bo, and he was the succession plan. Unfortunately, he came down with phase 4 lung cancer. It was non-smokers, phase 4 lung cancer, completely out of left field. I vividly remember he used to take me on a lot of trips. And sometimes it was because I was, the top sales guy and we were recruiting advisors or what have you. But I remember telling my wife, Jamie, or my girlfriend, Jamie, who's my wife now at the time, not you, Jamie, the other Jamie
So
in my
both
life.
of your,
My
both,
husband's name is Jamie.
Is it
both
really?
of you are married to Jamies, and you're talking.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I did not
Solid
know
name.
that. Yes. But I remember telling my Jamie at the time, like, why this dude keeps inviting me on these trips, but I'll keep going because we get to play golf at these amazing places and go to these great dinners and stuff like that. And we were in Scottsdale, Arizona, where I had my first and only hole-in-one out at Whisper Rock with Bo. And he had this cough, and it wasn't like a nasty, wheezy cough. It was just something like that. But it was like August. It was hot, I'm like, man, you've been coughing. He's like, yeah, I got to get it looked at. So literally, it was probably 30, 45 days after that. Now, here we are walking 18 to 36 holes of golf a day, staying out later than we should at dinners and things like that. And 35, 40 days later, he calls an all-staff meeting and tells us he has phase 4 lung cancer, just like that, out of left field. And it was a very, very trying time. It was like, what? I mean, it was... you talk about just a complete, like, slap in the face. Like, what are you talking about? Like, here's a guy that was 34 years old at the time, was wise beyond his years, was a rock star in our industry. And then out of left field, he has non-smoking phase 4 lung cancer, was completely healthy. So unfortunately, he went through 2 double lung transplants, a number of stents of chemo, and at the age of 37, he lost the fight to cancer, and he passed away. And at that point in time, we were probably at 50 employees. We were doing about $1 billion in overall production, and it was a decision time for all of us. Like, everybody, the frat party was over, and everybody had to grow up real quick because Bo was the Tom Brady of the organization. Like, he was the beating heart of the organization. I mean, clearly Bill and Erica were the founders and they were still there, but Bo was really running the day-to-day and kind of on the field with us, going on trips and, catering to advisors and different things like that. And now he's gone. So, part of the reason why we have such a passion for this business and we have such a passion for FIG is because of the story of Bo. Because I have no doubt that my good friend and mentor is up there looking down on us, and he's pretty darn proud about where we are today and where we're going into the future. So for the organization there at FIG, there were things that I stepped up and started doing because I was traveling with Bo so much. As I was joking about earlier, I don't think he ever thought ultimately what ended up happening was going to happen. I think maybe he thought I'd end up doing his job for him and he'd get to play a lot more golf, but it just naturally progressed into this place when he was sick and he was fighting cancer and things like that. I found myself not doing what I was doing before as the top sales guy, but doing more of what he was doing as the chief marketing officer, which is what I ultimately ended up stepping into when I stepped out of sales and became the chief marketing officer. All the while, all of my buddies that were working alongside me in sales roles stepped up and started taking on a lot of the accounts that I was managing and doing things that I was having to do from a sales standpoint. So everybody at the organization stepped up, and all of those guys and all of those gals are still at FIG today, just like I am. So when I say our culture is similar to Carson, when I say that we're a family, when I say that we're a community, we've seen each other. We've been with each other since we were 21 years old and didn't know any better. And we're segmenting our days, calling the West Coast and ordering pizzas at 9 o'clock at night because we knew we'd catch people on the way home, and to talk to them about what FIG could do for them and stuff like that. And all of those same guys and gals remember those days today, which is just a special culture that we have. And you can sense that very, very quickly when you walk into our office, just like you can sense that same culture here at Carson.
Jim, as a CEO, and you guys have a bunch of companies now and kind of the FIG family of companies, how do you keep the culture going, right? Because it's one thing, as you talked about, the people who were there, that felt it, that knew Bo, and grew up in it. But you guys have gone from 50, you have 3x that, right? And
yep.
Employees. So how do you keep that culture going as a CEO?
Yeah, I tell you, it's a challenge. It's probably one of the most challenging things. I had an all staff meeting just last week, and I told the staff, I was like, I feel like that there was a pre-COVID culture and there seems to be a post-COVID culture here, at in our companies. And, I think we're going to have to continue to challenge ourselves as leaders to figure out how we want that post-COVID culture to really be, because I don't think it's ever going to go back to what it ultimately was. Mm-hmm. So, how we've continued to keep our culture intact. I mean, it was much easier when we were a company of 25 or 10 or 50 or whatever, that everybody kind of knows what's going on. But then when it's 165, it's a little bit more difficult. But how we've been able to keep that is, keep that culture somewhat intact. It's not exactly the same, but for the most part, I would say intact is, empowering our people. And the guys and gals, it doesn't even always have to come down to tenure. I feel like all too often people search a lifetime to find a career. And there's a difference in a job and a career. Right? I have a ton of dear friends of mine that do very, very well in a job, but that's all it is to them. It's a job. They're punching a clock, right? To provide for their family and what have you. But they don't know what it really feels like to have a career. And I feel very blessed and fortunate at a young age to have been lucky enough to find a career. And once you have found that career, you have a passion that sometimes is hard to explain for what it is that you do. I like to joke, but I'm kind of serious. At FIG, it's not a cult, but it's pretty close, yeah. Right? Kind of like what Ron feels here.
Yeah. Ron even calls it a cult sometimes, and he's in a good way, right?
Yes.
You drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, drinking the Kool-Aid, right?
For sure.
So back to keeping that culture, when you say empowering your people, it doesn't always have to do with the people that have been there for 20 years, 21 years like me. It has all to do with, you can quickly see the people that look at what they're doing at our companies as a career versus a job very quickly. And the ones that see it as a career are the ones that you rise up to have as leaders to keep that culture intact.
How can you tell?
How can you tell? I mean, I guess, I don't have a lot of gifts, but maybe one is a read on people. And it's pretty easy to see, how do they care? Are they there early? Are they staying late? If you have flexibility to work from home up to 5 days a week, do you do it at all? Because in order to lead, in my humble opinion, you have to be present. It's not impossible, but it's harder to lead remote or from afar and everything all day, every day, right? So, what I can tell very quickly from people that differentiate between, hey, I just have a job versus a career, is are they willing to go the extra mile? And do they really care as much, or even sometimes maybe even more than you do? And it's pretty easy to see that just based upon their actions.
We have not had this like job versus a career talk before on the show, but it's one that I hope we can do like a whole episode on, just talking out loud with you on it. And Bert's told me something a while back that stuck with me, similar to this. We were just talking about like his experience in public companies and seeing CEOs come and go, and like what does it take to be a CEO of a public company or a company. And one of the things just resonated there. It's like, how much do they care? Do they love the place more than the last person? And he's like, and if you don't love the place more than the last person or more than me, you can't do that. You can't lead it, because you have to love the place. And he's like, yeah, probably have to love it at an irrational level, right? Like it doesn't even make sense why you love it so much, but you've got to love it that much, because there's going to be a Saturday at like 6 a.m. you're going to get a call, and there's going to be something on a Sunday, and if it's all work-life balance and you're not there and it's shut off, it's going to be hard to lead, because people are going to need you at inopportune times.
Yep. Yeah. What I've always tried to instill in my leaders, which is what my father has instilled in me, is, act like you've been there before, and be willing to take the hill with the rest of the team, and be the first one to get up on your horse and take that hill. Like, lead by example, right? We've all heard that before. And I think in some companies, that's a lost art. I think sometimes people think leadership is telling people what to do, whereas I would argue the contrary, in that I think true leadership is showing people what to do, and being the first one to get on your horse and say, we're going to take the hill, for a cheesy analogy, if you will, and they're going to go alongside with you. So, not asking anybody to do something that you're not willing to do yourself alongside them is, I think, vital to any culture in the future for a company.
Jim, we've been asking people about what does finding your freedom look like to you? That's our newest question. We've
I
thrown
heard
in the
that.
mix.
I heard that a lot today, and so it got deep up there on stage.
So it's about to get deep. Well, it's been deep. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
very
been deep.
personal things.
Finding your freedom. I had a second, like, as I was listening today, I was like, yeah, wow, no one's ever really asked me that before. Like, how would I answer that? And then, of course, the devil, your phone, distracts you, and you're like, oh, I got to go over here and have this conversation with that person. But yeah, finding your freedom. I mean, to me, I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. If you have a passion for what it is that you do day in and day out, because let's face it, we spend, I forget, what's the percentage that we spend in our offices and at work of your day-to-day daily life?
I spend 98.6% of my life.
I was going to
at
say
work,
it's 90 some percent, of our lives, fortunately or unfortunately, the way you look at it are at work, right? And finding your freedom is to make sure that if that's the way it is, make sure it's something that you have a passion for and that you love to do day in and day out. And having that, not to be, I guess, cheesy or what have you, but, that work-life balance, to make sure that, you also have enough of a head on your shoulders to not let work completely take over your life and dominate your freedom, which can easily happen as a leader of the company sometimes. So to me, to sum it all up, is, loving what you do day in and day out. You'll never work another day in your life. And then making sure that you have enough time to take that idle time you do have to spend with your loved ones, to include all of your friends and family, and live it up, is the definition of freedom to me.
I love that. What Ron calls the work-life harmony
instead
of work-life balance. Right?
Yes.
And we'll close on this one. How close do you think you are to that today, Jim? It's the 1 to 10.
Yeah, the 1 to 10.
Yeah.
I'd say I'm a 5.
Okay.
And why I would say a 5, I think I'm there when it comes to a passion for what I do professionally day in and day out. But one of the biggest struggles that I have right now with all that's going on, and I'm not alone, any leader of a company has this, is balancing that with, your professional life. I mean, in what we do, we're on the road all the time. I mean, Jamie, you know this. I see you all over the place, just like I'm all over the place and things like that. So, fortunately, I have a saint of a wife, Jamie, and I have 3 lovely children. Colin's 9, Kayla's 7, Colby's 6, and they've somewhat become accustomed to dad, being gone and stuff like that. But I like to dial that in, and what would get me north of a 5, maybe 2. I don't think I'll ever be a 10.
Yeah.
I don't think you can ever be perfect, but to figure out a way to have a better work-life balance, for sure.
There's a lot of love for Jamie on the show today. I'm a big fan of it,
There is.
My Jamie's also a saint.
Yes.
But Jim, yeah, you've been amazing. I appreciate you a lot. I know we've known each other for like over a decade now, and it's been wonderful getting to work more and more closely together with FIG and Carson. And Anna, you've been nothing short of spectacular here.
Thanks,
And so
Jamie.
Anna's
You're
one
the
of the Anna is one of those leaders out there that it's a similar thing. Like, you don't ever have to worry about what she's doing, right?
Aw.
Like, anything that I'm like, hey, Anna's got this, and I don't worry. Like, I don't worry. It's going to be good, and you don't have to check on them. And like, that's a really cool trait of a leader too.
Yeah.
Thanks
Amen
for
to that.
I worry, but I did make it happen.
Well, with that, we are closing out this episode of the Framework Podcast. Thank you, everybody who listened or watched, and thank you, everybody here that is part of the FIG or Carson Network. And thanks, everyone, Anna and Jim, for being part of today's show.